Good evening. Welcome to the March 15th meeting of the Auburn Finance Committee. This open meeting of the Town of Auburn Finance Committee is being conducted both in person and remotely, consistent with Chapter 107 of the Acts of 2022, which suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed to participate remotely as long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. For the public to join the meeting remotely by telephone, 1-786-535-3211 and access code 991-599-357, or the public can join via computer at global.gotomeeting.com, join 991-599-357. All supporting materials that have been provided to members of this body are available on the town's website. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda. Please note that this meeting is being recorded by the Auburn Cable Television. So permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda participating remotely are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Kevin Kennedy.
Here.
Ed Coleman.
Here.
Trevor Sansucci. He's not here. Michael Marshall.
Here.
Patrick Jones.
Here.
And Diane Byrne. Here, she said here. Thank you. Town officials and employees participating, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Town Manager Ed Kazanovich.
Here.
Administrative Assistant Sharon Kwiatkowski. Here. And Karen Harnoy, CFO and Town Accountant.
Here.
Thank you. Also, please note that each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. All right, so on tonight's agenda, we're going to look at budgets. There aren't any transfers for us to vote on, nor are there any minutes for us to vote on. So we're going to look at, review and vote on fiscal 2024 budgets, operating and capital. We're going to look at the Department of Public Services, and the first department we're going to look at is the Senior Center Elder Affairs Division. Okay, so Jean Boulay, hi, you want to come to the podium and we can ask you questions? We have your budget here. You sent a lot of supporting documents. Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, and I'll just read some parts of the budget. I see that the department request it for the subtotal for the whole budget is $189,607, and the town manager recommendation is $187,607. So there's a $2,000 difference there. And this is a 6.54% increase to last year. Of course, last year's budget, initial one, didn't include the raises that came in later that year, the annual raises. Is there anything you want to highlight for us in the budget?
So the $2,000 difference is when I had met with Ed, we had looked at the gas usage, so that's why it was reduced to 13,000 instead of the 15,000.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
And then the only other line item I wanted to point out was the van drivers.
Yep.
So I had asked for $44,162, which is an increase. So presently we have 3 van drivers. And this is to budget potentially to hire 1 more van driver. Because we do have Mary D. Stone, which senior transportation, and also Julia Bancroft, which is opening. And we also have Mobile Home Park, which uses transportation, as well as others in the community.
So it sounds like there's been an increase in demand for rides.
Correct.
Okay. And so that 44,162 would take care of the 3 of them. Aren't there some grants that are used to pay for the van drivers also?
So we're in contract with the WRTA. So this is within the contract of the WRTA where we reimburse for driver salaries and for gasoline.
But do they provide any money too? Do they?
Yes, so yes, we get reimbursed for eligible expenses. That money's recorded in the general fund.
Okay, yep.
Typically, I don't know, about $30,000 a year, Gene?
Yeah, about that, yep.
Yeah.
So this would be the total amount expended, but then we get some reimbursed then too. Great. What other, I was going to ask too, what other grants? I know there's the formula grant, correct? Is that what the senior center receives?
Yes.
Okay, what other grants
So-
are there?
So right now, just the formula grant, and then
Okay.
also through Massachusetts Council, sorry, hold on,
That's it.
I just don't have, I can tell you. So it's with Mass Council on Aging through EOEA. The amount is $58,776, which represents 4,898 seniors, age 60 and over in the town. And that's based on the 2020 census, and it's $12 per senior. So it was an increase.
Okay,
And Madam Chair, historically, the senior center has gotten a lot of mini grants, could be through a local bank.
oh, good.
They have the Friends of the Auburn Senior Center that contributes money for various items.
Yep, the Friends Group.
The Friends Group. So there are a lot of other funding sources other than the formula grant.
Okay, thank you.
And Auburn Cultural Council also helps us fund entertainment.
Oh, good. All right, thank you. Gentlemen, questions? Start, Kevin?
Just related to, obviously, we've heard there was, the facility itself, the senior center has received damage, and that's an ongoing project. I drove by the other day, I saw there's a lot of work going on. How is that affecting your programs? Are you utilizing other facilities? Do you see any other costs that you're gonna need in order to ensure those programs that are in high demand are still being offered? And then sort of my second part of my question was really to programs. I think you may have answered through some of the mini grants. I know we have a program coordinator up there, at least on a part-time basis, in a very small program expense line item. I was just making sure that you have enough relative to offering all the programs that are in demand for the seniors in town.
Yeah, so right now, because of the damage at the senior center, we are renting Packagug Church. We have one wing of the church that we rent. So we have office space, and we also have space to put our program supplies. There's the fellowship hall, which we use, and there's also a room in the back called 104, 105. So we still are able to have all of our ongoing programs. So we have our exercise classes, say like senior sweat, we have chair dance, strength and balance classes, yoga, meditation, coloring club, iPad, knit and stitch, which is 2 days. So the money that is spent on instructors is through our formula grant.
Gotcha. I noticed that in the paper. Yes, thank you.
And just, Mr. Gazovic, I know we had a transfer relative to, was that to pay for some of the rental fees at Packagug Church, or where will we see those costs?
So, no, the rental fee for the church is being paid through it's covered under the insurance policy
Okay.
to relocate those activities. We also wanted to bring up during the capital discussion, there is an item in there for FY '24 to replace the carpets. That's being done through the insurance claim. So we may reprogram that once we know, I would say within the next month, we should have a better handle on all the costs. Some of the HVAC work that was damaged as a result of the water, they determined that there was a failure, not only because of the water, because of the wear and tear of the aging equipment. So there's a portion of that they may not cover. So it would be probably our recommendation to redirect the money for the rugs into the HVAC. And that's something that we'll probably make a request of prior to town meeting or before you conclude your budgetary deliberations. We may request that, earmark that for another item.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Ed, any questions?
Good for now.
Mike?
Good.
You're good. Diane, any questions? No. Okay, thank you. So, we have a, town manager recommendation for the senior center elder services of $87,607.
Motion to recommend? Second?
So we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Kevin?
Yes.
Ed?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Patrick?
Yes.
Diane?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. All right, so let's look at the capital then too. Is that the only thing that we, was it just the, that one item that was on for the senior center?
There are two items.
Two
One,
items.
$15,000 to replace the carpet
Yep.
and $10,000 to upgrade or replace the HVAC.
Okay, the carpet and HVAC, all right. So right now, those are going, kind of on hold so that we can find out what's happening with the insurance then. Okay. Okay. All right, I think we're all set. Thank you very much for coming in.
Thanks.
Thank you, Jean. All right. So the next budget on the list is our library. Okay, and Hi, Jean, how are you?
Good evening, fine,
Jean-
thank you, how are you?
Jean Collins is here. Is there anything you want to highlight for the, with the budget before we start looking at it?
Just in general, you know, there's, I think just about a 3% adjustment. I know that last time, I think Kevin had asked about programs, I had had to transfer some funds to programs, and so this was a little bit higher for programs this year, actually, for everything. Some of our costs, as you can imagine, increased significantly. Other than that, there's nothing that's really, you know, that much different from before. But I'm happy to discuss any of the items that you,
Okay. All right, so let's take a look here. I see that the total, library total budget, department request is $738,309, and the town manager recommendation is $694,180. That's an additional $22,912 to last year, or 3.41% increase. And again, last year's items didn't have the COLA, cost of living increases, the initial budget. And so the one item I see a difference on is library associates. So the department request is $272,230, and the town manager recommendation is $228,101. Do you want to tell us about that, Jean?
so, I'm sorry, could you repeat that? I think I'm looking at.
The library associates line has a discrepancy between what you requested and what the town manager recommended.
So I think that since COVID, our positions, we have not needed as many positions, so they're in there, but we probably don't need to fund them this year.
Okay,
We're increasing our administrative level, and so the funding went there. So we're still good as far as, we have open positions, we need to fill them, but when they're filled, we're okay with our staffing levels.
okay, I understand, thank you. All right, any questions, gentlemen? Kevin?
Just, you mentioned that I brought up programs last year. Is it an increasing, have the programs increased or the cost of the existing programs
Well,
increased? or a
I
combination of
I
both?
added $2,000 to the program line item budget, but programs have also increased significantly. One of the things that impacts us a lot is when we have fewer staff. We put on a lot of programs ourselves, so we're not paying presenters, but our program materials cost a lot. So we're kind of ramping that back up. We still do have significant numbers of people coming to our programs, especially children's. This past Saturday, we had our St. Patrick's Day program, and over 200 people came on Saturday morning. And with the number of children there, we actually put on 1,053 crafts and activities during that time. So that's a lot of preparation and a lot of,
Yeah.
a lot of activities and a lot of materials. But still, we put a lot of energies into our programs too. With fewer staff, we can't do as many ourselves, but we're ramping back up to do that, hopefully. Our
I
summer,
think they got 200 people without serving corned beef and cabbage.
Imagine if they had. My second question is relative, the space continues to evolve down there. I think last time you mentioned the children's space you were expanding. I haven't been in a few months, but can you just tell us where you're at? And then also, again, this might be more for Mr. Kasnovich as to the status of the room off the back. Where are we relative to that project?
Sure. Well, the internal expansion of the library, the children's area cannot take place until the sunroom has taken place. Joanna Paquin, DPW Director, and I and Ed met the other day, so looking at budgets and kind of where we're at in the timeline. I know that we're looking to put it out for bid fairly soon. Ed can probably talk a little bit more about that. But then once that's finished, then we can address the children's internal space, which is not nearly as big of a project because it just means taking out a wall, which is really just shelving and moving a lot of things. So some of our technology, for instance, has to be, removed in some of our books and everything, but that won't be nearly as big a project as the sunroom. And Ed can probably give a little more detail about that.
So I could tell you it was an eye-opener for Karen when she came in, because there was all these sources of monies all over the place and stuff to keep track of. So we had a meeting, and some of these grant dollars that were earmarked from the state are date sensitive, so we're trying to expend those on a timely basis in order to honor the grant, and so we don't risk losing that money as well. There was one we were unable to expend because the date expired, and we got an extension from the legislature. They had to do a special vote for that. But there's a number of moving pieces here. There's the Pappas money of $665,000. There's local share that we went to town meeting with. There's state earmarks, and there's probably 7 different funding sources for this project. We're waiting for the engineering piece, like Gene said, that would allow us to go out and put this out to bid. So we're getting close. And we continue to meet on it and to discuss a strategy in order to move this project forward. That being said, we're hoping that we can live within the budget that has been approved with all those shares of money, knowing that construction costs have risen since the inception of the concept of this grant was approved. But we believe that we have the resources to do it. We won't know till it goes out to bid. We may have to do some alternate bids in order to live within the amount of the total construction costs. So, yeah, we're getting close, and we'll bring you up to speed. We'll give you an update as we get closer to that big time.
I didn't realize the bridge and the sunroom are those truly tied together into one biddable project, or are they?
No, I think well, we're gonna try to get one GC to do the work. So, yeah, I think they're gonna be tied together. Certainly, we'll follow the recommendation of the engineering firm that is putting together the specs for this. So it would be my expectation that would be under one umbrella.
Thank you.
Okay, all set. Ed, question?
Gene, through the chair, how many open positions are there? Because I think you might have mentioned, and I probably misheard you, but are there open positions you had mentioned due to COVID? Or is it more there are open positions, is it hard to hire people at the current salary? Is that, and then the third part would be, what is the typical visitor? Has it rebounded since the beginning of COVID in terms of how many people are visiting?
Okay, so thank you. The numbers of people visiting in practically, I know, every library across the state, we're only back up at about 60,000, and that's pretty standard for everybody. So in that respect, we don't really need as many people because the last thing you want is somebody with, you have to look for something for them to do.
Yeah.
For us, we require bachelor's degrees and master's degrees for administrators, and the candidate pool is not strong. So we are, still looking. It's better to take your time than a bad hire.
Yeah.
And we're still sort of, reorganizing that a little bit as well. I would say, did I turn this off? Should I keep going? Our administrative level, however, is in really good shape. I know that I have an assistant director position here, which will be combined with an operations associate. But administratively, we're in good shape. All of our administrators are significantly cross-trained, and they've been with me for more than 5 years, some of them even longer. So that's not necessarily a concern. To fill the positions that are open and more like the daily. We move around, for instance, more than 1,000 books a week in various places, and we have to do holds and lots of other things. So our time is taken up trying to keep up with that because, of course, we want to serve our patrons first. So it's a balancing act, and I've been looking, and hopefully going to fill some soon. But if not, probably look into, as I did when I first came here, is some transitional positions that it may be part, for 2 or 3 months at a time, which worked out well for us and with the other candidates. So right now, I do have assistant director position open, and a senior library associate position, and a library associate position. I'm not planning on filling the library associate position at this time, but I would like to fill the others if I can. And I also have some part-time positions open.
I don't know if I know the terminology, but I think in past years you had mentioned you were seeing a increase in, I don't know if it's called virtual, but customers maybe getting books electronically or something, is that, or?
Yeah, certainly during COVID, a lot of people switched to ebooks. And a lot of people stayed with ebooks, but an awful lot of people still want regular books. But there are more people now who do half and half. And ebooks cost considerably more than regular books as well. But we're required by the state to spend 15% of our total appropriations on circulating materials. So we have to spend that money regardless. So I'm not sure if, is that what you're asking?
No, that's perfect, thank you.
Okay, Michael, questions?
All set. All set.
All set? And Diane, do you have any questions?
No, thank you.
Okay, Jean, you mentioned the, minimum amount being spent on circulating material, that's 15% of the, overall budget?
Correct.
Okay, and that allows us to, that allows the state to provide us some money too, correct?
The state, that has to be spent from appropriations, but by spending that correctly, open a certain number of hours and having the right amount in the certain areas, then we're fully compliant with the state. This year, we actually received, in fact, I called them because I wasn't sure if it was a mistake. We had almost $8,000 more in state aid grant this year. And the reason that they gave me was that so many libraries did not make their, they weren't in full compliance. There are levels, you can be 90%, 100%, or 80%. And quite a few libraries were not in full compliance with hours or appropriations or how they spent the funds. And so there were leftover funds, and they distributed that to the libraries who were in full compliance. So we actually ended up with considerably more this year in state aid, which I will be able to put some more of those towards programs.
Okay, great. Yes, Mr.
And Madam Chair, I just want to emphasize too, having discussions with Jean, this recommendation does meet our required contribution as
Yes.
the state determines, so.
Maybe one other question to the chair. Ed, on the 15%, that's based on the budget, but if positions are not filled, they don't deduct that from what you actually spent? Is it based on what you budgeted for those?
So, I can tell you, the initial calculation goes upon, what's appropriated.
Okay.
Jean at year-end files a year-end report that we actually show the actuals as well as any indirect cost that may not be baked into the budget that is used in support of the daily operation of the library.
Okay, thank you. All right, so, hearing no other questions, we have a town manager recommendation for the, library division, $694,180. Do I hear a motion to approve?
Motion to recommend.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and second to recommend. All in favor, Kevin?
Yes.
Ed?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Patrick?
Yes.
Diane?
Yes,
And the chair votes yes. Great, thank you very much, Jean.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, capital?
Oh, right, capital, yep.
Jean?
Let's look at capital. All right. So I see this year, there's one recommendation, $15,000 for computer updates. Okay. Any questions on that? I think we're all set. That sounds great.
Okay.
Thank you, Jean.
Thank you. Thank you for your support.
Okay. Okay, so the next budget we're looking at tonight is the, cable and community television. Okay, and here's Mr. Hugo, Chris Hugo, how do you do?
Good, yourself?
And, is there anything you want to highlight in the budget?
Nope, pretty much not changing anything, we're just moving some money around.
Okay. So it looks like the total, department request is $196,381, and the town manager recommendation is $187,311. And that town manager recommendation is, $10,227 less than last year. It's a decrease of 5.18%. Okay, so we see the wages and the part-time wages there. Okay, so members, any question, I see, and the only difference is legal. Why was that line reduced?
We're currently undergoing contract renegotiations this year. It looks like we're gonna complete them this year. We'll be one of the few communities in the region that actually have them done on time. And, we won't need that line item anymore.
Okay. Thank you. So, questions? Kevin?
No.
Ed? Patrick?
When you say you won't need the line anymore, you mean until you have further negotiations when the contract expires?
Yeah, that'll be in, let's see, that'll be in about 7 years. We're required to begin contract renegotiations 3 years out from the end of the contract. So we won't have to start, contract renegotiations for another 7 years.
That's it, thank you.
Thanks. Diane, any questions?
No,
Thank you. So I just had one more question about, retained earnings and the Camp Gleason project. Do you know what the retained earning balance is right now? Or,
I haven't checked recently.
I want to say it's about 300 some odd $1,000.
okay, that's fine. And, is that all earmarked for the Camp Gleason project?
No.
Okay,
So, we did I think we did a fall town meeting adjustment to address the needs as a result of the, rehab of Camp Gleason. So, we're getting close. They're doing the plumbing, wiring?
Yeah, the kitchenette equipment's already been purchased and delivered. Right now, they're doing plumbing and wiring. And the broadcast equipment was going to be handled through the, not through our budget, through the ARPA, was it?
So I think we did a one-time appropriation of 90 some odd $1,000 out of retained earnings to meet the
additional costs?
additional costs. And those costs increased over what we originally estimated because of the rising costs due to COVID and the economic times.
Okay, thank you. So it's in progress, we're getting close.
Yes.
Camp Gleason, okay, thank you. All right, so we have a town manager recommended budget for the community television of $187,381. Do I hear a motion?
Motion to recommend?
Second,
So we have a motion and a second to recommend. All in favor, Kevin?
Yes.
Ed?
yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Patrick?
Yes.
Diane?
yes,
And the chair votes yes. Great, thank you very much, Chris.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, capital?
Oh, gee, again, capital, hold on,
Hold on,
Chris.
Chris.
All right, got that. I think I'll
I'll reel you back in.
Just pull it out. All right. Let's just take a look at what's here.
You know how much Chris likes being on the side of the camera?
Just want to make sure I don't accidentally hit a button.
All right, so let's see, for fiscal year '24, there's a request and a town manager recommendation, $36,000 to replace broadcast equipment. What's being replaced, in this facility or another one?
Yeah, we're going to replace the TriCaster in this room and the cameras. the Stratocaster's been having some problems, and the cameras are old tech. They're all HDMI. We're going to upgrade to SDI.
Okay,
Easier to run the cables and better quality.
thank you. Questions? Okay, and we'll vote on the capital towards the end of the budget process. All right, thank you very much, Chris.
Thank you.
Okay, our next budget is the, do we have a veterans agent here today?
So, Madam Chair, our veteran agent moved on.
Right, all right, so let's hold off on that budget until after, we'll take care of the budgets for people who are here. So how about, town clerk and elections is next. Deb Gramo, how do you do? Good, let's get to your budget. Town clerk and elections. All right, so, we're looking at a, let's see, a department request for the town clerk's office of $263,847, and the town manager recommendation, $213,187. And the difference is, due to some changes in the salary lines. Okay, do you want to, is there anything you want to highlight about the budget, Deb? Anything you want to highlight?
As far as the difference, or?
Well, just the budget period, you want to show, look pretty straightforward.
It is pretty straightforward.
Okay. All right, do we have any questions? Kevin?
No.
Ed?
Nope, looks good.
Michael?
I guess just for the town manager, what was the reason? I know there's a new position recommended. Is it just that we don't have the money for it this year? Or?
A couple of explanations for that. Certainly, when I made this recommendation, I did not have the state aid numbers, and I think when I announced what the state aid was, I wasn't prepared to reopen up the budgets and consider some asks that we couldn't honor. And that's across the board. So, and I made that known that one clerk's position was requested that we did not recommend at this point in time. I think what we'd have to do is we'd have to do a study to see the level of staffing in our comparable communities to see if we're adequately staffed based upon a number of criteria. That's something we would do for any department. And it's just our way of doing our due diligence to make sure that statistically we can support an increase in staffing in any department. So that's why I didn't make the recommendation at this time.
Will that study also include cost of benefits? Is it just to study the position, or is it just?
So as you know, Patrick, benefits can vary by department, all depending on a number of things.
Right.
You know, I mean, a benefit cost is a huge piece of any department, but I guess it's the stroke of luck. I mean, we could have a couple of individuals that work in that office that may opt to be covered under their spouse's insurance plan.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big savings to the town by having them do that, but no, that typically, this fringe benefit piece is typically not part of our analysis.
Okay. Questions? Diane, do you have any questions?
I guess, through the chair, just a question, sort of relative to Patrick's question. So is that study for just on the one position, or is it town hall positions in general? Because I know in the past, as things got tight, you sort of requested some folks to work as utility players in different departments. I imagine town clerks have peak times of the year that peak with business for instance, collections may peak at different, everybody sort of, DIS probably has peaks of the year when building permits. So Deb's going to.
Well, I was just going to say, one of the reasons that I did request an extra person is because of the Votes Act that was voted in last year. And with the increase of responsibilities on the vote by mail, which is part of the law now that we are required to do. So with the increased workflow, it's really increasing us at least the every other year. And in addition, we have all the other work that's done, and we're going into a presidential. So with that being said, that was why I was more or less looking for an extra person. And like Eddie said, even, I would even consider when he decides or whatever, even a part-timer would help, because then it could be staggered when you really needed that person.
And the
Or
vote,
so.
and the Vote Act is exactly, what is it?
The Votes Act that was voted into law last year made a lot of permanent changes that they made in 2020 and in COVID, but the vote by mail, so it's more or less where you could absentee vote only for 3 different reasons. Vote by mail is anybody can vote by mail. So the Secretary of State mails out those postcards. If you don't answer that card, or if you mail it back because you want your ballot by mail, then we have to input those all. So where it was only like a 2 to 3 step process with voting before on processing elections, now it's like a 13-step process. So it is tremendously more work. So that's why I had asked, another person.
Thank you.
Is it more, I'm sorry. Just while we're on that point, is it more work and labor intensive because it's not fully automated? I ask that question because sometimes when systems change or switch, they become labor intensive at the onset, but that after a few years, they become less labor intensive.
Now, elections is pretty complicated. And unless you actually see what actually goes in, vote by mail, voters absolutely love. It's easy. You request your ballot and we mail it out. But that postcard that is sent to you at your home that you fill in, that is sent to us, has to be inputted into a computer, where now we have that application that we have to file. Then, once we get the ballots, we have to stuff them and mail them back. And then once the voter votes it and sends it back to us, if it's not done the way that it was supposed to, with the instructions, then we have to reject it, send them another ballot, because they can get up to 3 ballots. So it's many steps. So where you vote, when you come in to vote on election day, you say your name, you get your ballot, you stuff it in. We have to save all these ballots,
No, I
put them in the
understand.
vault,
Well, I guess
bring
my
them.
point was because we're somewhat trying to get more
Yeah,
automated.
it's
There's still a-
probably never going to be that automated, but we
Right.
also have in the budget to get a high-speed tabulator, so at least in these elections where they're allowing us now to do early processing, like before the election, we can process ballots, so hopefully, because these ballots also, because they're folded, take a lot longer to go through the tabulator, they're really slow. So we're trying to get ways to make it faster and quicker.
So the acts of 22 really added more manual efforts to the process.
The Votes Act signed into law what they had approved to do in 2020. They just made it all permanent, most of it. So it's been going on, it's just permanent law now. So vote by mail can be in is in local elections unless, your municipality opts to opt out of it. And early voting in person is for all elections, not local elections unless you opt into it. But years ago, the early voting in person was only in biennial years, every other year for the general election. Now it's all of the elections. Does that make sense?
Madam Chair, if I could just add a few things, and I want to zoom in on Kevin's comments. We saw value in that swing approach, because certainly it's worked, and we actually approached the union during our last series of negotiations, and they had no appetite for it. So we saw the value of being able to move people around in various departments for higher classification. And it's worked. We've done it before but under the old system, we gave them a higher pay grade. But we try to entice more of that interest by offering its own classification. Like I said, there was no appetite. In Deb's case, I understand the additional workload, but it's cyclical, and it's only during certain times of the year and only for certain elections, not for all elections. So to support a full-time person strictly for voter-type activity really didn't make sense at the time I was considering it, because I understand that that person would be critical and key during those times, but during those off times, that's why we have to do those staffing studies. So for the normal workload, the normal day-to-day stuff, is the ratio consistent with other communities or our comps? That needs to be examined and determined.
Something that I think has merit along this line that I think is a perfect time to interject is that you also have a situation that goes on in your collector's office where you've got January, February, and March, where you're just inundated with real estate tax, excise tax, and you get probably just say 15,000 people that live in the town, and they're all coming into the collector's office. So you've got the same argument going on in the collector's arena just for a snapshot of time. Then you move forward and you've got the same element happening in the city clerk's office. And I venture to think that that could be happening in other places. So a study is relevant, but I think it might merit thinking about a position that could float between some of these peaks in some of these departments to help lift some of the workload at these various peaks during time, because it's almost a hindrance because it's cyclical.
Right. And that's something we would consider.
Right.
But I just don't know how we would approach that.
Right, and how do you get that kind of a study
Given
done?
the
Yeah.
current language in the collective bargaining agreement.
Exactly, right, exactly. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? So, there's we're voting on the town manager's recommendation, that budget's recommended at $213,187. Do I hear a motion to recommend?
Motion to recommend?
Second.
Okay, so all in favor, Kevin?
Yes.
Ed?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Patrick?
Yes.
Diane?
yes,
And the chair votes yes. All right, so let's look at the CIP and then let's look at the registrars, or actually, yeah, elections. Let's look at elections next, and then we'll talk about the CIP. So elections, all right, here. All right, so, the department request is $55,194. The town manager recommendation, is $50,244. And, that recommendation has an increase of $142 to last year. So how many elections are we having this year, Deb, for this fiscal year?
Two.
Two. So May and September?
No, it will be the primary in March and then the local
Oh, okay, all right.
in May.
Primary, March, local, okay.
In FY '22, there'll be three.
Okay.
22, 25. I don't want to go backwards.
FY '25, there'll be
Yes,
three?
there'll be
Okay. All right. Questions? Yes, sir.
Mr. Chair, so can you just explain the precinct officers? I think if people look back, we've gone up significantly as far as precinct officers. And I know when I go in to vote now, it seems like you have a lot of people in there, a lot of help. And I know National Honor Society and stuff has helped.
They help in the state and federal, so every other year they help, and hopefully
But
maybe
there seems to be
March.
more there. But that one line in particular, can you just explain?
So what, well, I had talked to Eddie and said that I would like to bring our election workers, election officials make $10 an hour, and I was hoping to bump them up. So this year, or not, that's why that is down. I was hoping to bring them up a couple dollars, because the
No.
A 16-hour day is
We,
an awful
we
long time.
recognize the federal minimum wage, which is $7 an hour, believe it or not.
7?
So I know there's a push now for the state to get the minimum wage up to $20 an hour. I am not I couldn't be supportive at the time, once again, not knowing the state numbers. I actually had a huge budget deficit projected, using a 1.5% growth factor from the state. The state came in at 6%, so we have some flexibility. That's something I would consider adjusting, but not at this time. Certainly, maybe we can consider a fall adjustment.
And just based upon our previous discussion about the staffing relative to the election cycles, the additional work, I would almost argue that a part-time position or any position you determine, whether it's part or full-time, probably better fits being a line item under your elections budget than it does as a full-time clerk's budget. If it's gonna have that ebb and flow based on election cycles, if their primary duty is gonna be support, mail-in ballots and things of that nature. Just a thought, you know?
Yeah,
That's a really good thought.
because it sounds like, based upon Deb's explanation, the primary
Yeah, well, it
focus.
says, it goes with the
But
whole.
that wouldn't, no,
cyclical.
if I was able to get, that would be one of the focuses, that wouldn't be their primary. We do need help across the board in the clerk's office. We have taken on, like, the retention program. We send and destroy all records once they're, because we maintain that database that we approved at town meeting, I don't know, I think it was 3 years ago. So we store all the records, and then when they can be sent to the state for permission to destroy, we take care of all that. So, I mean, a big part would be elections, but an addition in the office would be covering everything.
Thank you.
And as far as the precinct workers, I mean, when and if I need help at setting out ballots, I get my election workers to come in to help out with that. So,
Any other questions? So we have a department recommendation, a town manager recommendation of $50,244 for the elections department.
Motion to recommend?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to recommend. All in favor? Kevin?
Yes.
Ed?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Patrick?
Yes.
Diane?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So let's just look at the CIP for the clerk's office. I see, as usual, at $10,000 for the book and map repairs. And is that to preserve the older records too? Okay, I'm so glad we're doing that because it's really important to keep those in good shape so we can
Yeah.
use them. Yep. Okay, any questions on
We're
that?
preserving Kevin's birth certificates.
Oh my,
Chiseled in stone.
all right.
Through the chair.
Yes.
I did have one question. You mentioned wanting to get a new vote tabulator, and I don't see that in CIP. Is that something that
it's,
would be in
well,
here, or?
There's an outside warrant article that you'll see when you receive the warrant.
This is why I asked the question.
yeah,
Thank you both.
we're contemplating because we can either rent it or we can purchase it. And where we're going into 3 elections, it might be more worth it to purchase it, so.
Great. Thank you both.
Stay tuned, that will be coming your way.
Can't wait.
Yeah.
It's going to be a hell of a town meeting.
All right, I think we're all set then, right? Thanks, Deb. Thank you very much for
Thank
coming
you.
in.
There's a big seal. Dominion.
Okay. All right, so, next on our list is the, Information Technology Department. Okay, and I see Mike Marino. How do you do, Mike?
I'm doing well, how are you?
Good, excellent. So let's look at this budget. It's, the department request is $334,209. And the town manager recommendation is the same, $334,209. This is a increase of 14% to last year, increase of $41,094. And I can see the increases, of course, because of the salary, because last year's budget initially did not have the cost of living increases, but I see there's also an increase in hardware and software maintenance.
Madam Chair, can you
Yes.
read that amount again?
Town manager recommendation, $334,209.
Michael, I know there was a last minute change. Does that reflect that change?
Yes, it does.
Okay. I just wanted to be
So
sure.
we're all set, okay, good. All right, so, is there anything you want to highlight here for us, Mike?
For the most part, it's the same as usual, just renewals. There is one component that's different under the People GIS line item. So that's a software that the town uses, different departments come together to pay. However, since last year, this fiscal year was the first time that it came to my department to pay for it. The person that previously dealt with it is no longer here. And we determined that there were some issues. The cost of the overall program increased, but it wasn't reflected in what the departments were paying. So in order to get that under control, since it came to my department anyways, I threw that in my budget as a complete unit. That way, we can keep track of the changes and the increase in that.
So that's probably one of the reasons we have an increase then in
Yeah.
that line.
So, Madam Chair, while I
Yes.
have the opportunity, that's
Yeah.
an area that we're currently looking at.
Yep,
The support that we're getting from People GIS is not adequate to meet our needs. So we're looking at a new platform, we're looking at OpenGov. And there's actually a warrant article on to fund that, a initial cost of $60,000. Is that correct, Caleb? 60-ish ballpark. I know there's under a state contract, there's a increase of 5% maybe next year, so that's reflective in the request. But certainly that's a pitch we're gonna make, and it is included in the warrant. And that would migrate whatever support, whatever we're using People GIS for over to this new platform.
and so we would just make the change,
There's gonna be a 6-month overlap.
okay,
So we're gonna have to support People GIS for 6 months before we can cut over to OpenGov.
okay. All right,
Has there been a pitch made by OpenGov?
Yes,
And is the town well aware of the user side as well as the city side of that software?
I believe that
I would take it GIS People is for permitting software?
yes.
And
So right now, we're using it for several applications. OpenGov, we're gonna use for all of our permitting. We're using it for the clerks, and we're using it for the ACO for dog licenses. Now, it has expanded options. Of course, that comes with a higher price tag, but there is consideration for growth as we move forward.
you're aware that it can be very labor intensive on the cities, on the town side. So your treasury office, your miscellaneous receipts, those areas, it's more labor intensive than it is on the user side.
So we're using Munis. There's no intention of migrating over to OpenGov for those departments.
So you're not going to interface OpenGov with Munis, you're going to manually port it over?
So our financial software is Munis.
Yeah.
There is no intention of utilizing OpenGov for any of what we're currently doing under Munis.
Okay. Thank you for anticipating my questions.
all right, so, let's see, Kevin, do you have any questions?
Just for Michael in general, and I think our Michael might have questions, 'cause this is his world, but I'm always sort of amazed with your budget that there's so little, and I don't know if, everything we do is technology-based, and your budget is always so small. It's just, things like, DDIS utilizing things for permitting, and we heard the police department talk about, systems, and I know their budget's a little different, but there's just so much, and I'm always sort of amazed that the number here is so small. So if that's what works, it works. It's just, I always get this sort of sinking feeling that, maybe we should be doing more relative to systems, because that is what society now demands. People demand the access to meetings and documents and to permitting, and it just, everything is based on technology. And year after year that I've been here, there haven't been a lot of big asks relative to continuing to bring us forward. And as we see things like cameras, in a blink of an eye, that technology is old, and we're moving on to the next thing, because people want, better feeds, better, access. I don't know if you can just give me, it's not a real question, but it's just sort of a general, observation, I guess.
Yeah, certainly. We do have, increases, and we have certain demands, but I try to keep it as small as possible and spread out over the years rather than lumped all together in one. And we utilize warrant articles sometimes as we need as well.
Yeah.
And we actually apply, there's a state grant that we apply, and we can apply for that if we receive it every 2 years. And we did apply for that this year, and we received it, and so we have that project that was done. So that was a large project for us. So we do utilize things like that to keep some of the costs down as well.
I often thought about utilizing Mike as a budget officer because he manages a buck very well. He does a great job, and kudos to him and John. They make my life easy on a day-to-day basis, and I know everyone else is going to say the same. Some of the other costs you'll see captured in the CIP as it relates to hardware, software, and those costs. I know typically we'll bring outside articles before you that tend not to be part of the annual operating costs. They're one-time costs. Mike pursues grants all the time. We get compact grants, we get other grants. So, Mike does a fantastic job with the budget. And I think he brings to the table, he's honest about what it is the town needs, but cognizant of the fact that, resources are limited. So if there is a need, we don't ignore it. We try to address it. And so, I think Mike has a good handle on all that stuff. Police department costs are in their own department, school department costs are in their department. So he's managing all the other town costs within this budget here.
And I guess just to follow up, without divulging what protections we have in place, every day on the news, you're seeing some different school system or municipality that has been the victim of malintent relative to outside entities getting into technology. Is there anything that is needed, or are you confident that we have all the protections we need?
Never going to be 100% protected. There's always a risk. We do mitigate it as much as possible. And part of that grant that I had mentioned earlier was part of that as well. So that certainly helps with that.
Thank you.
How much was the grant that was received? What was the amount of it?
I believe it was around 60,000.
Good. And what is it being spent on?
That was our backup recovery systems.
Okay. Thank you. Question?
I do. Can you just clarify for me on the hardware, software maintenance? Is that mostly contractual dollars? So most of those are just the contracts that come with all the softwares?
Yeah, basically it's the renewals, maintenance programs, things like that.
That's the only one I had. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right.
I'll just say, there's a plug for renewals and maintenance. There's a lot of software that you don't have to pay for maintenance, but the second you stop getting pushed updates, and that's where a lot of the security flaws happen. So you're doing God's work, man.
All right, great. So right now we have a town manager recommendation for the info technology department, $334,209.
Motion to recommend?
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to recommend. All in favor, Kevin?
Yes.
Ed,
Yes.
Michael,
Yes.
Patrick,
Yes.
Diane,
yes,
and the chair votes yes. Okay, so now let's look over to the CIP for info technology. And I just see one item, $60,000 for new virtual machine servers and software. Any question? And that, yeah. Yes, sir.
I did have a question. How many of our systems are on local servers versus like on the cloud? And how comfortable are we with continuing to own and operate servers, like as a town versus moving into the cloud, which I know is obviously getting cheaper, but still expensive?
Correct, yeah. The cloud options seem to be a lot more expensive at the time. We have most of our systems local. We have one system that we just went to a cloud-based as a trial this year, and we'd like to continue that into this next fiscal year. But the rest of the systems are local.
Was that?
I guess I'll say one other thing. I don't know how close we get to end of life on servers, but like on the public safety side, we obviously try to budget for, fire trucks and ambulances and police cars in advance of when they are going to stop working. Are we doing similar things on the server side? Like, are we comfortable that we are far enough in advance of when we're going to have failures? Because again, if all of our town systems are on local servers and we have a town server go down, like,
So
buy the
this,
services for the towns. So.
this plan keeps our servers on a 5-year schedule, so every 5 years they'll get replaced. In fact, we had 2 before, and when we replaced those 2, I kept one of the old ones as a third unit just to have, and now we're utilizing that. So one of them is actually 10 years old and still functioning, and I do have backup. The other one, I didn't get rid of it, I still have it as a backup just in case we need to utilize it. But this keeps the 3 systems on a 5-year schedule, so every 5 years they'll be getting replaced.
Great. Thank you.
Yep.
I think we've all faced those situations before, and sometimes you can't sleep at night knowing that if you lose a server, then you're in trouble. So we often have these discussions, but certainly I think in a pinch, and I think it's well planned out, well in advance, we can accelerate it, we amend the CIP if we have to, and we have at times. So we review the CIP on an annual basis and reassess and reprioritize based upon those needs.
I'll say one other thing, just because I'm on a roll here. Where we have so many of our systems on town servers, I know you just mentioned that you have a backup system, but obviously, like ransomware is a huge concern. And if it's a town-owned server, like how comfortable are we that we could recover our I'm sure, immense amount of information and systems that are on town servers if one of them were in some way?
Yeah, certainly. So we did have a new robust system that we used that grant for, and I've tested it doing backups. I've built fake servers and got rid of them and replaced them with the new system, and it's fairly quick. I mean, depending on the amount of data on it, it's going to take longer, but it works, and it has some key protections on it. So if we do get a ransomware attack, some of the backups, they'll be available regardless. So there are certain considerations like that.
Through the chair, madam, to add to Mike's point, the servers are a delicate thing, and we do face a lot of different issues with cybersecurity. But I brought this up in prior years, and it merits the IT department doing a really good job at educating the employees not to, get caught in phishing attempts and stuff like that. So it's really double-sided. It's not just on the server portion, but, the end user can compromise us in 2 seconds. But I know we have a lot of that in place, which merits just mentioning. And I know that's part of the security.
I would like to mention too, on that note, we are signed up for a program through the state. The state has a grant that does cybersecurity awareness training, and we are signed up with that. And this is our 3rd year, I believe, in a row. And it's just starting this month now, so.
Because I know insurance companies don't charge for cybersecurity at the moment, but they're all starting to ask the questions at renewal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just, again, again, we're just on comments here, it's invaluable, and beyond the data and the loss of work and all that other stuff, there is that loss of trust if, if we're compromised in some way, shape, or form. Or, that loss of trust, and corporations value that, but I think municipalities as well, that the citizens think are requiring upon us that whatever data they put into the systems, personal information and whatnot is safe and secure. Yeah.
Secure.
Okay, well, I think we're all set. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mike, for coming in tonight. Thank you.
You can come bring your budget here anytime.
All right, so our next budget is, DDIS, Department of Development and Inspectional Services. I see Ms. Coyle here. How do you do?
Good evening.
Good evening. Let me just let's get this out here. I got to, stuff here. Okay. So we'll start with the, let's see, the Public Health Department is the first, department within the umbrella. And I see that, the department request was $319,260. And the, town manager recommendation is virtually identical, $319,259. I might ask Mr. Kazanovich, why is there $1 difference?
Yeah, I'm looking at top, the wages is off by $1. It's gonna be cents in there, and it has to be the rounding, so.
Right.
We'll take a look at that.
Okay, so, and that includes the DDIS director's salary, assistant health director, inspector, and board salaries. Are there any job openings in that position, in the, health department, Darlene?
Yes, thank you for asking. We do have the inspector job that is, that's open right now, and we're hoping to fill very soon. There was our assistant health director had left, and it allowed our health inspector, who's been with us for quite some time, to get a promotion and move up. So we will be trying to fill that inspector role.
Okay, thank you.
We have,
Eh.
excuse me.
Oh, that's okay. Ms. Kazanovich, how are we voting on this? Are we voting the DDIS total? Or are we gonna be voting individual subtotal?
No, you're gonna vote bottom line.
DDIS department total. Okay, thank you. All right, does anyone have any questions on this, public health budget? No?
Through the chair.
Yep.
Just, there are a few like pay increases from 20 to 23. Are those contractual or are those just increased?
Sure. So we do have a change in the clerical, and that is due to responsibilities in the department for the clerical position. Over the past several years, clerical have taken on a lot more due to pandemic and a lot of changes within the department. So there is one change on that. And then we also, we haven't had this line item before, but we have an overtime line added, and that is for the GEU contract. So when we have our clerks cover the public meetings, so we have a lot of meetings in our department. So overall in DDIS, we have Board of Health, we have planning, we have conservation, zoning, ZBA, and a number of other meetings that the clerks will cover. And as part of the GEU contract, it's a 4-hour minimum. So that overtime line has been added. So that is new this year.
And that line has been added to, oh, I see, to 3 of the budgets, 2 of them. It's been added to 2 of the budgets, correct, okay. All right, any other questions?
I'm just curious if you've thought about shifting the hours of the day when there is a meeting. So rather than have somebody come in and get overtime for a meeting, would it be fair to say that they could work 12 to 8, knowing that they would be in attendance that day for that meeting?
We have a pretty busy department, and to not have a clerk during the day does impact us while
Not
we,
necessarily during the whole day, but just a part of the day that there's the meeting. So instead of working 8 to 5, 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 they would work 8 to 5, 8 to 5. If the meeting's on a Wednesday, they'd work 1 to 8. Just a thought.
I appreciate the suggestion.
That's
The meetings do occur, so there's different schedules on the meetings. So some are once a month, some are twice a month, and they're various times. So typically that 4-hour mark is not something that they're going over. So if there's a meeting, it's the 4 hours is covering it.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so, moving on to the next budget, we're looking at, for the planning department. There's a, department request of $94,817, and the town manager recommendation is $103,736, which is an increase of $9,818, or a 10.45% increase to last year. I think it mostly looks like the increase, all the increases in the salary lines. So we have a town planner and a land use coordinator. Is that a new position, land use coordinator?
Yeah, so the land use coordinator is, we had some operational changes within the department. So we had some challenges with keeping the position for the land use clerk, and kind of taking a look at it over the past several years. It's a lot more on that for responsibility over the past several years with the remote meetings, making sure that we have things available electronically, in kind of more of an increased need when the public is seeing something that has to be acted upon. So if there are, any sort of land complaints, if people are operating near waterways and those sort of things. Typically, we have handled it within the department, but basically what happens is we'll have to, take a look at where our staff is at, they drop what they're doing, and then go to emergency. So kind of looking at what the needs are and what has happened over the past several years. It was kind of a discussion with Julie and Ed to kind of make some operational changes. And so that position, the land use coordinator, is now supported. The salary is supported equally over four ways. So we have it through planning, zoning, conservation, and through conservation fund. So we feel like that is a nice way to spread the responsibility over those divisions, and it's directly related to the work that's done. There's a lot of time-sensitive postings, agendas, decisions that need to get out, applications that have to be advertised for, so there's a lot to it.
Okay, thank you. Questions, anyone on that, on this budget?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I'm going to ask, it's a rarity, I'm going to ask that budget line item 5306 legal notices be, I would like to change my recommendation, and I know Darlene and I have talked about this, because the original intent was to establish a revolving account.
Yep.
And I don't want to establish a revolving account specific to this item, because if you look at the history of this item, you're going to see some negatives there. What's happening is the applicant that they do advertise for, we're covering the cost and they reimburse us, okay? And there's a timing issue. That revenue should go into the general fund, not directly into this line item. So I want to gross up this line item to provide adequate funds for what they need to do, knowing that there would be a revenue source coming in, strictly revenue, and they're not netting each other out.
Okay.
And I don't recall what the level of receipts were. I want to say it's like 1,500. That being said, I'd like to ask that I change my request from 500 to 2,500, knowing that that increase is going to come in on the revenue side. And I think Darlene and Caleb would support that.
Do we need a motion to amend?
I don't think we need a motion.
No, I don't think you need a motion.
We're just making
I
it,
think if it was already
Good with
voted,
that,
we
yeah.
would need a motion, but.
yeah.
No, but I think you want to clarify that you're adding the bottom line to be 105,736.
Yes.
We will, and then when we get to the grand total that we vote on, we'll add $2,000 to that. Where is it?
So not only am I going to change my recommendation, but I think I would ask Darlene to change hers as well for request.
Sure, I appreciate that. And it is something that we have had some discussions about and, trying to figure out how the best way to handle the advertising is. So we can certainly, it is a moving number because we do not know how many applications we're going to get. So I just want to caution everybody, it may be something that we have to come back to the committee, just in case we don't have enough money in there, depending on how many advertisements and so forth we have to handle.
I think it's a start. We can always request an amendment at the fall town meeting, but this would be tax levy neutral because I'm going to increase estimated receipts by 2. Knowing it's not going to go back into here. So it really doesn't change the bottom line. When I made my presentation of $1,006,000, that shouldn't change.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So any other question on this line? Diane, are you all set? Any questions on this, planning department budget?
No, thanks.
Thank you. All right, so now we're looking at the third budget. It's the Division of Economic Development and Energy Management. So we have let's see, the, department request $59,703. Town manager recommendation $52,546. And actually, that's down 12.67% to fiscal year 2023. And, Darlene, why is it a decrease? Or are we offsetting?
So there's actually, the difference on this one was actually just a clerical error, because this is an offset, so that total salary is between tax levy and offset with muni aggregation. So this position handles both economic development and energy management responsibilities. So we have both tax levy and muni ag offsets.
I have a question for Mr. Casanova. Can you remind me again what the muni aggregation is?
So it's a energy management. We have Muni Ag. Our residents are allowed to piggyback on a contract that allows for a lower rate of payment on their electricity. So we went out and we got a rate, although we were paying 9 cents per kilowatt hour. I'm sure you all know what electric rates are now. We went out and we broke it at a rate of 23 cents per kilowatt hour. When National Grid went to their pricing, they're 32 cents per kilowatt hour. So we have an adder onto our bill, which is a fraction of a cent. That generates about $60,000 per year. That money is used for green energy and energy incentive type projects here in the town. That not only benefit our residents by paying reduced rate, but it benefits the town by reducing costs for either electric vehicle or it could be energy incentive type work that's done on our HVAC systems. It could provide a sum of money for solar arrays on roof, projects such as that.
So the town receives about $60,000 a year? And, okay,
And so the cost, the offset here is, Brooke, our energy manager, is doing all of the admin work, all of the filing of state, green energy type, documents. She's, working with the brokers to try to get the best natural gas rates for our buildings. She's trying to get the best electricity rate for our buildings as well as the residents of our community. So it's an ongoing thing all year round. I can tell you, money well spent.
yeah. Okay, any questions on that? Yes, sir.
That was just going to be sort of my question was, that economic development position was new, Julie had, and I think it was under your office at one point initially, and then moved over to Darlene's. But successes with that? I mean, what are we seeing successes relative to that position, relative to
Absolutely.
real estate community businesses, and could you just kind of give us a couple success stories as we?
So, I think, first of all, I think we're there for anyone who's interested in coming to town. It's kind of like a welcome opportunity that Brooke offers anyone who may be looking to relocate or open up a business here. In terms of economic growth, we've seen, I think, from a number of efforts. Number one, through our economic development coordinator who participates with the DCG, they come in. Brooke in the DCG is instrumental on kind of paving the way for businesses, make it user and business friendly, whether it's seeking permits or whether it's looking to relocate to town. At the same time, to kind of double pronged, we're also working on a single tax rate. And as you know, over the years, we went from a classification of 161, we're currently down to 112, and we're seeing growth in the commercial industrial aspects of our tax classification. So it is paying dividends. There's evidence to show that it is, and ultimately it benefits the residential taxpayers of our community if we can see growth in the commercial industrial portion of our classifications.
Thank you. Okay.
DCG,
Development Coordinating Group.
and they do what?
So they
So
vet out businesses who are seeking to do a number of things here in town. And maybe Caleb would be able to describe on an operational level what it is they provide.
I was really just looking for an opportunity to get Caleb in front of the microphone.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So the Development Coordination Group, Brooks actually runs the group. It's a group of all the department heads, fire, police, building, Board of Health, planning. It gets business owners or people that want to come to town in front of all the department heads to get feedback before they go to planning board or before they go to zoning. So everybody finds it pretty helpful.
Have you had good response relative to business owners that were dealing with or looking for opening in other communities as well, and found that our process?
They love the process of getting people's feedback before they spend the money to have plans drawn and go to regulatory boards. So great feedback.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And if I may, it's kind of, it's nice for our department because Brooke is, as Ed said, it's kind of like a one-person welcoming, that particular business. So, she's got a really nice way about her. She's able to present things, and it makes it a little easier for all the different divisions because all the things can kind of be funneled through Brooke for that initial meeting. So DCG is really helpful for all of us to kind of all stay connected. And one other thing that, that I would like to also add is Brooke is very active on the Auburn Chamber of Commerce. So she is attending those meetings. She's in conversations with the businesses that we have. And that makes it a really nice exchange.
I'm glad you said that, Darlene, because I was going to comment, we have a business roundtable meeting here quarterly. We gather all our businesses, anyone who's interested, and we share information, we share ideas. We tell them what's going on here, they tell us what's going on in the business community. And that sharing of information is very helpful, not only to them, but to us as well. So we try to keep a pulse on what's going on at the business level, and I think that quarterly meeting proves to be very beneficial for both parties.
Okay, good. All set?
So, thank you.
Ed, questions? Michael? Any questions on this, Pat? Patrick?
All set, thank you.
Diane, any questions on this economic development, energy management?
No.
All set, thank you. So the next budget we're looking at is the building and code enforcement. The department requests $210,306, and that town manager recommendation is the same. And that's an increase of 3.93% to last year. It says the building commissioner and assistant DDIS person, the clerical, local inspector's salary. So any questions?
Madam Chair, just quickly, relative to permitting fees and things that, money that are taken in, which account does that, where does that go? Does that go into the general fund?
General fund revenue.
Okay.
All but for conservation fees, it has its own revolving account.
Yep.
So really fees, as we talk about it, that's $60,000 for the gov, really coming out of general funds is a common sense
Yeah.
place. So those same fees that are coming in, that system is, it sort of makes sense to support,
Correct. So, I mean, I can tell you just in building permit fees, the town has been averaging $500,000 a year just for that one fee.
Really?
It all depends on the level of activity, but certainly it's been very active and robust. I think you'll see that continue, fueled by a number of larger projects. So that's something we keep an eye on.
Okay, that's a lot, I didn't realize it was that large. That's pretty big. Okay, questions? Diane, any questions on the, building and code enforcement line?
No.
Okay, so we'll look next at the Conservation Commission. And I see the, 1/4 of the land use coordinator's salary is here. So the department request and the town manager recommendation are the same, $15,972, 1.89% increase to last year. I see we have just a new line, miscellaneous supplies. Any question on this? Okay, I have a question about the conservation, is this when we see that part of the salary is coming from the conservation fund, is that from the conservation, the wetlands protection fund?
So yes, the fund that we use for the applications that we receive, so we have a fund for that. And that we are proposing to take an equal amount out of that fund in addition to the 3 other divisions that I mentioned.
Okay, so how does the money get into that fund? Is it from people looking to work on a project in town?
So various applications through conservation, notice of intents and requests for determination of applicability. If there's any fines, that are issued, those are the fees. Am I missing anything, Caleb?
No.
Thank you.
Portion of conservation has to be.
Okay. All right, questions, Kevin? Ed?
All set.
All set? Michael? All set? Patrick? Diane, do you have any questions on this, on the Conservation, Commission budget?
No.
Thank you. Okay, so last one we're looking at is animal control. The budget, department request and town manager request are the same, $81,036. And I see we have an animal, control officer and several, part-time assistants.
And if I may, this past year, we've actually really kind of had a lot of good change. So we're trying to build, kind of some backup in the department. When I first started in this role, we didn't have any animal control at all, except for part-time. It was kind of like an on-call. And so since that time, with support from the administration, we're able to get a full-time animal control officer, and really that position has so much on them. And we realized that it's a 24/7 type of position. So building in some backup for the full-time animal control officer is really important. So in the past year, we've actually had two assistants that have gone through the state certification and training. And I'm happy to say that, they're really kind of coming into their own. They really enjoy it. Amy's able to, provide guidance and really kind of make them more confident in their abilities. So that's been a really good thing that has happened in the past year. And so we've spent a lot of time on that, and I'm happy to let you know that it's a really good thing for animal control.
Okay, good, thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
if I may, I think what makes that unique is the 3 that he uses backup, 2 are employees. So if Amy is out sick or on vacation, we have some flexibility by using some people who are sitting in the hall that can go out and respond to those
Yeah.
calls.
Okay, good.
And not pay those services outside at additional cost.
Okay. Question?
Just questions. I know Amy and her backups get a lot of accolades throughout town, social media, their response and their efforts. A lot of animal lovers obviously out there. Are there any, do we receive any, is there any grant fundings or other charitable donations in support of her programs?
Thank you. So we do receive some donations. As a town, we can't really ask for donations. So we are always grateful when people bring donations for the operation of the kennel, or monetary donations to go towards. We do have a revolving fund for animal control. We have used that fund a number of times when we've had difficult cases of animals needing medical attention. So over the years, our animal control officer has been very strong in that area to be able to use the money wisely. In addition to that, we also apply for some state funding. So there are some dollars out there for spaying and neutering programs. So those are something that we are actively doing and receiving. So it's a really good thing that we get those in, and we are able to do that because our animal control officer is very well versed in it.
Thank you. And maybe more for Ed, as we've talked about so many different budgets that relative to grants, and I know grants in of themselves are a Herculean effort to just interpret what they're looking for and documentation and follow-up, and they're complicated, they're complex. And I hear every department doing their best to get some. Do we have anybody on staff for the town, with the exception of maybe yourself or Karen, that are able to help department heads sort of navigate the landmines of grants and what comes along with them?
So I think a lot of what we receive trickles down from either the state, the federal government, the CMRPC, or other agencies that provide those types of dollars. In terms of ACO, I know Amy is constantly on top of those things, if there is money available, just like the Stanton Foundation, we were able to get a grant to construct the dog park. The Board of Selectmen just authorized the town to apply for, accept and expend up to $37,500 for additional equipment within the dog park. So, yeah, I think to the best that we can, to the extent that we can, I think we're always looking for other opportunities that may provide dollars for whatever department is seeking those, so. We don't have a grants person per se. I think that's been delegated at the departmental level. But I think history will show we've been very successful in getting grants, and we're going to continue to do that as best we can.
Yep.
No, thank you. Just, I mean, accolades to the department heads, because they're not easy. There's a lot that goes into them, and I think as we all start our careers, I don't think necessarily, especially those in the different departments, budget's not the first thing as you start your career path, and it's amazing that as well as people do, and
It's
putting all this together.
cumbersome and it's time consuming, and you got to be able to put the time in, and
It's not the fun part of the jobs. Sorry, as the accountant might find it as the fun part of the accountants, but yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Kevin. Ed? Michael?
I have a clerical observation. Since this is the 8th or 9th page of a series of pages, I notice at the bottom, if you go one page back, it's very clear what the change or the percent change is. But because you've got a total department of these all on one, it might be prudent to separate and drop that down and give us the animal control change. And then the total, when I look at this, I can tell it's a $28,000 difference between the recommendation and the prior year appropriation.
I
But
see what you
can't
mean.
tell what's going on in animal control.
Gotcha.
And it's clear on all the other pages.
okay.
Just to clarify.
I think just an oversight, so that may have been overwritten. There should be,
Because I think
there
it's a
should
very-
be two. There should be the
Yeah.
change within animal control, and then the change bottom line based upon the sum of all those.
All the pages, right? I take it it's just the change of all the pages, because when I do the math in my head, the change for the animal control is de minimis.
Yes.
So, yeah. So just, that's my only observation, carrying a series of groups together.
All right, thank you. So let's see, we've looked at the individual budgets, and now we're looking at the total DDIS department. The department request is $783,093, and the town manager recommendation is $784,855, and that includes that adjustment of $2,000. Do I hear a motion to recommend the town manager request?
Motion to recommend?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Kevin?
Yes.
Ed?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Patrick?
Yes.
Diane?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes.
Thank you.
All right, Darlene, so we need to look at solid waste, and I didn't see an,
Madam
is there a
Chair,
capital? I didn't see one.
Actually, if I may.
Yes.
We have the ZBA, so Board of Appeals budget.
Oh, okay. I
That
beg-
falls under us,
All
and
right, so let's go right to the ZBA Board of Appeals. The department request is $15,138. Town manager recommendation, $14,472, which is a decrease of 2.55% to last year. And I see that, again, 1/4 of the land use coordinator's salary is in this line.
It's further.
yes, so that is just again, a clerical. It was decided during the budget meeting that it would be easier to have that as 4 equal amounts.
Exactly, yep. So do we hear any questions, or do I hear a motion to recommend the Board of Appeals budget?
Motion to recommend?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to recommend the $14,472. Kevin,
Yes.
Ed,
Yes.
Michael,
Yes.
Patrick,
Yes.
Diane,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. Okay, so that's all set. So we want to look at CIP. I see on the front page, Department of Inspectional Services. Let's see, there's an amount, $50,000 for an inspector hybrid electric vehicle and $11,983 for a 2021 Explorer inspectional vehicle. Question, Mr. Kazanovich, what does premium mean next to the source, financial?
So the last time we went out and borrowed money,
Yep,
was just over $5 million. We forced a premium on the sale of that bond. Now, the law has changed. Any premium resulting from a sale on a bond sale, you have to now use for the payment of debt and interest on that bond.
all right.
Prior to that, DOR allowed you to reserve that, and you can spend it on other capital-like items, and that's what we did. We reserved about 400 some odd thousand. We're using 50 of that for, is this the one, we had a grant, right? Is this
Yes.
one vehicle, right?
So we are, we actually have two electric vehicles that we are using grant funds for, 12,500 each. And those have been ordered. Caleb has worked very hard on these. I'm happy to bring him up if you need more detail. But we have two electric vehicles that are in process. And we're hoping to be able to navigate the backlog of vehicles, but
So I don't know if I shared this with you at the last meeting. I don't remember if it was the Board of Selectmen. One of the vehicles that we bypassed on was a Mustang.
Oh, that, yeah.
Okay, so we're not getting the Mustang. The vehicles are limited, so, we're try to opt for a sedan, they're not available. Problem being is we got an earmark, we got grant funds, they have to be expended, and we got that extended.
we did. Yeah, it's extended from.
So if we don't spend it, we're gonna lose it. So now it really forced us to go out and get a truck that we could use for inspectional services. It does fit, but we had to pass on the Mustang, so.
Okay,
And we have the Charger out here that will be used to help keep those vehicles charged. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, but.
Yeah, so the two vehicles that we ordered, we got a grant for 25,000 per vehicle. We ordered a Ford Lightning for the building inspector and a Chevy Volt, I believe it's called, for the solid waste coordinator. The only issue is we ordered the vehicles, but we're not guaranteed to get them because of supply chain issues. So we have our fingers crossed that we can get the vehicles prior to the expiration of the grant.
and did you say 25,000 per vehicle?
That's what
Oh,
the
that's
grant,
not-
that's what the grant was.
Michael's so happy over here.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I think it's 12,500 each. It's probably 25,000 total, so I misspoke.
Yeah.
Oh, 12,500 each, okay. And, let's see, the 2021 Explorer for the inspection vehicle, that's, a lease?
Yeah, that's the final payment on a lease purchase for a
Okay.
vehicle we already have.
Thank you. Tell me again, Mr. Kazanovich, though, you forced a premium on the bond sale, but now the government says you need to, you have to use it on,
We reserved it.
right,
Because we
right?
were allowed to reserve it.
Right.
And we can spend it on other like equipment.
Other like equipment, okay.
In other words, there's certain criteria. It has to have a life expectancy of more than 3 years with a value of $10,000 or more. That fits our capital plan.
All right, any questions on these two capital items? Diane, do you have any questions on the capital items?
No,
Well, actually, I do just have one,
Thank you.
because it says premium here, is it automatically slotted in the general ledger not to be touched? Like, is it isolated in its own account so it doesn't get accidentally spent?
So it's set up as a special revenue account.
Special revenue account, right? Okay.
Not in the general fund, it's not up for
Exactly,
balance
it's
reserve.
segregated out
Yeah.
so for that purpose.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. So we're going to look now at the solid waste budget.
Madam Chair, we're
Yes.
not going to take action.
Oh, we're not, oh, you're right, it's empty, okay. So are we waiting for the contract?
We're waiting to sign a contract. We had a call yesterday morning, no,
So that means.
yesterday was a solid waste.
Yeah, Monday.
Monday morning. So we're still in, talks with, Casella. And we're hoping to get something, hopefully by the end of this week. That will allow us then to examine the impacts, determine whether or not we have to raise rates in order to cover 100% of our costs. And that would allow us to then make a request and a recommendation for the budget.
Okay. Thank you very much.
So I'm thinking that we can program that into, I would say the 22nd may be aggressive, either probably the 29th.
Solid waste on the 29th.
But certainly if it is ready for the 22nd, we can bring something in.
So you would need to know that before you post the agenda, which will be in a few
Yes.
days. Right.
All right, thank you very much. I think we're all set, Darlene. Thank you very much. Thank you, Caleb, for coming in tonight, answering all of our questions.
Thank you very much for your support.
Yes, yeah. Now we're going to go back to the veterans, veteran services. All right, I can't find it. Remember what number it is, Sharon?
It's under 543.
Oh, 543, okay, oh, way down there.
Under
Okay.
public services?
Oh, it is, okay, yep. Yep, okay. So veteran services, the veterans, now the veterans total, department request, $147,812. That's the same as the town manager recommendation. I'll let you guys get to it. Go back to the library and all those, it's in the end. All set? Okay, so, Ms. Casanova, I remember we had a veterans agent that was shared with other communities.
Yes.
An individual, okay? And that individual's gone?
So we have a regional agreement with the towns of Oxford, Charlton, Southbridge, where Karen came from, and Auburn. VSO left 3 weeks ago-ish, about 3 weeks ago. He had another opportunity no, it's probably longer than that. Anyway, we're currently advertising and hope to start interviews, hoping maybe next week. Although the application period is open through the end of March. So we're currently reviewing those resumes, and that individual will come in under that salary line item. Now, we do pay, as a result of that agreement, we pay about $8,000 for support for Keith Roberts, who's the director. So there's a shared expense relative to fringe benefits in his services as well. And it allows coverage when we don't have Eric. Keith is picking up that workload now. So we hope to have someone on board shortly. And the other big piece is the relief in medical, and we used 120 based upon our active active monthly obligation.
Yep.
Now, that's gonna fluctuate,
Depending on who's coming in, right?
depending on, because there's an annual review based upon income, based upon assets and all that, so sometimes people fall off, others come on board, so that's a moving target all the time. But based upon what we're seeing now, 120 should be adequate. In previous years, we've upped that, because our caseload was a lot higher. And as a result of Mary D coming online and JB coming online, there's an expectation that there may be an uptick on the eligibility for medical relief, but certainly we won't know until that call comes in.
Okay.
So this is something that we may have to adjust going forward, but we won't know until we're, well into the fiscal year.
Okay, thank you. And what's our state reimbursement on what we're paying out in relief and medical?
We get 75% of all qualifying expenses.
And who did you say is covering this right now, or doing this?
The veterans, what's his director?
Who is?
Veterans agent or director in Southbridge.
Oh, so we're paying him a stipend and he's coming in and doing this, or?
No, I mean, that's part of the agreement. So
Oh,
we have an agreement that is shared cost, and we pay the town of Southbridge. And I think you just billed the town before you left, correct? Auburn? About $8,500.
Okay.
And that's indexed about by 2.5% every year.
okay, so we do have someone doing those reimbursement requests, that's great. Okay, thank you. All right, any questions on the
So,
veterans?
yeah, basically, it's, off of yours, Ann, so there's a veterans director, and then are there multiple veteran service officers underneath?
We have a part-time VSO, 18 hours per week, and that's made up of 1 full day or 2 full days on the ground here, and they are available by phone if there's a situation that requires immediate attention.
And am I able to ask who typically would your applicant pool be for this? Is this retired people that maybe have a veteran's background that can help navigate the system, or?
We attract both, so we got about 7 applications now, mixed between active and retired.
Thank you.
Okay, Kevin, all right, Ed, any questions on this budget? All set, Michael? Patrick?
All set.
Okay, and Diane, any questions on the, veteran services budget?
No.
Okay, thank you. So we have a town manager recommendation for veteran service of $147,812. Do I hear a motion to recommend that amount?
Motion to recommend?
Second.
Okay, let's see, all in favor? Kevin?
Yes.
Ed?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Patrick?
Yes.
Diane?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Okay, so that is it for tonight's schedule. Our next meeting is the 22nd, in 1 week. We'll have the school department coming. Bay Path, we'll talk about, and we'll vote on Norfolk Agricultural. On the 29th, we'll look at the Department of Public Works and all their divisions. On April 5th, the annual town meeting warrant articles and the CIP vote. And we'll get in there the debt and interest. Have we covered benefits or anything?
That would be on the 29th, pension and
Pensions
benefits.
and benefits? Okay.
You should have a revised
Oh,
schedule I sent out.
Oh, you did, okay. All right, I'll check that out. All right. Any questions? Concerns? Anything you want to ask, Mr. Kazanovich? All right, do I hear motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, Kevin?
Yes.
Ed?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Patrick?
Yes.
Diane?
Yes.
And chair votes yes. We're adjourned. Thank you.